Good morning guys, and welcome to episode 2 of Decrypto, where we'll be decrypting another week in crypto. My name's Gareth Jenkinson.
And I'm Darryn Pollock. Today we're going to be looking at what Vitalk Buterin had to say about centralized and decentralized exchanges. He was very uncomplimentary about centralized exchanges, and we're going to be looking at what exactly he meant by that.
So he gave a talk at TechCrunch a week ago, and if you missed that, check it out.
And I definitely personally hope centralized exchanges burn in hell as much as possible. Even if centralized exchanges end up having a lot of volume, like the better decentralized exchanges are at the as a baseline, kind of the more happy I am, because that way we can really like take away this stupid king-making power that these centralized exchanges have, where they have this ability to just decide which tokens become big by just deciding to list them and then charging these crazy $10 to $15 million listing fees. And like the more we can get away from that world and into something which actually satisfies the blockchain values of openness and transparency, the better.
Yeah, so strong words from Vitalk. It's interesting because a lot of people use centralized exchanges not knowing what the difference is between decentralized and a centralized exchange.
So in essence, Vitalk's telling the cryptocurrency community at large that they need to build better decentralized exchanges, really to combat the size of these massive centralized exchanges that have millions of users at their disposal, and at the end of the day, all the power in the world.
A good example of that, though, is when Coinbase were about to list Bitcoin Cash, and there's allegations of insider trading. Because they had such power over the market, their staff knew and could have used to their advantage the fact that listing Bitcoin Cash on such a large exchange is going to instantly give them a boost in price. So you can come in, get your Bitcoin Cash at a lower price, know that on the certain date that's going to be listed on Coinbase, the centralized exchange with all this power, that money, the price of that is going to go up, and then all of a sudden you've made money for free. And it shows the kind of devious side of these centralized exchanges and how they can get away with things.
Another big factor with these centralized exchanges is the fact that they can charge insane listing fees. As we heard from Buterin, he was saying that some of these exchanges could charge $10, $15 million a pop just to get your cryptocurrency listed on their exchange. So it shows you the power that they have. And once you've listed these coins on these big centralized exchanges, they've got millions of users, and it literally makes or breaks which cryptocurrencies become big in the market.
Okay, so centralized exchanges have all these issues with them, and Vitalk wants decentralized exchanges, which makes a lot of sense because essentially a decentralized exchange works like the blockchain is meant to work. It gives you a lot more control and a lot more security because you keep your own private keys, which is unlike the centralized system. And when you make a transaction, it's basically peer-to-peer. A centralized exchange is basically just a bank. And the whole point of cryptocurrencies is to get away from this third-party bank system. So it's almost unfathomable that decentralized exchanges have so much power, because the whole notion of cryptocurrency is to get away from the bank. And now we've just got massive conglomerate banks in the centralized system.
So like you've said, these decentralized exchanges are basically supposed to fight against the notion of a bank, which a centralized exchange kind of becomes. The problem is they don't offer the same liquidity as these centralized exchanges. I use a centralized exchange, you use a centralized exchange, and what that offers us is the ease of access to fiat currency. So I can have Bitcoin sitting in my account, Ethereum sitting in my account, and as soon as I want a few thousand rand or a few $1,000s, I can just withdraw that cash. The centralized exchange has that liquidity in their account, whereas a decentralized exchange might not. But the real point of these decentralized exchanges is that they encourage people to use cryptocurrency. They don't want you to be withdrawing your money. They want you to pay each other in cryptocurrencies, and that's where we should be moving.
Oh, there we go.
She's in there, man.
So In terms of like the real world application of centralized exchanges, we're seeing regulators start to step in now because they act like banks, but they aren't being treated like banks. The laws and the rules that govern banking and finance don't apply to them, yet they still have millions of dollars worth of money with them. So I was chatting to a guy, Andrew Lim, and he says in South Korea, back in the day, when you want to open an exchange, you would apply via mail order for your license, essentially, which wasn't even a license. And he said lawyers would tell him that if money went missing or data was breached on these exchanges, it didn't actually matter. They could put up their hands and say, sorry, we've got no liability on this. It's just too bad. But now it's all changing. The centralized exchanges are getting a lot of input from the South Korean government, especially if we use them as a case study. And they recently just reclassified what a cryptocurrency exchange is, and that basically makes them a legal entity, which sounds great because it legitimizes it all. But what it also does is it means that these centralized exchanges now have to operate like banks, and they have to be under the same umbrella in terms of banking laws and regulations.
So similar things happening in Japan. They've issued business improvement orders to a number of cryptocurrency exchanges in the country. And what this is going to do is actually wash out weak hands. So anyone that's running an operation that's not really looking to serve customers properly and actually provide a good service are probably just going to drop out the game. And it's going to leave exchanges that are actually willing to meet these know your customer regulations and actually provide a good, proper service. They're creating an environment for the right kind of people to be running these operations.
Then we have a thing like Bancor, and the timing couldn't be more perfect. Vitalk says this about decentralized exchanges, and they retweet him and say, yes, decentralized, that's the way to do it. Look at us, we decentralized. And then soon afterwards, they get hacked. And they get hacked, so user funds go missing or get lost, and they freeze user funds. And if you think what a decentralized exchange is or should be, that shouldn't be possible. So now all of a sudden, you've got this decentralized exchange claiming to be decentralized, but acting like a centralized exchange, having full control, like a bank would, over your money, over your funds, freezing funds, saying funds have got lost or missing or stolen, and that couldn't happen in a true decentralized exchange. It's a false sense of decentralization.
The thing I love about the cryptocurrency community is that the social media side of things is amazing. Everyone who's anyone is on social media, and at Twitter especially. Charlie Lee jumped on it straight away, and he basically said the same thing. Decentralized exchange should never be able to lose your funds, firstly, and secondly, they should never be able to freeze your funds. Jackson Palmer, Dogecoin creator, said just as much, saying that if an exchange has a kill switch ability, it's not decentralized. Whale Panda, who's basically an anonymous user on Twitter, but is highly vocal, said just as much as well, and he retweeted that Bancor tweet and basically said this didn't age well because they had retweeted Vitalk's original tweet basically saying, oh, burn in hell's a bit extreme, but yeah, we're all for decentralized exchanges. A couple of days later, hacked.
It's interesting times for centralized exchanges, just exchanges in general. A lot of them are coming under the spotlight in places like Korea and Japan, like we've spoken about. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Will the regulators get what they want, and will the know your customer become a lot more stringent, or will there really be this push for decentralized exchanges like Vitalk wants and kind of bypass all the need for the regulators? That battle still has to play itself out, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
We'll be back next week in Durban for the 3rd episode of Decrypto, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
And like it if you like it, and we'll see you next week.